In a silent cemetery, a billionaire woman finds a waitress crying before her son's grave. Beside the young woman, a boy with eyes identical to the deceased makes her heart race. Curious and suspicious, she begins an investigation that unearths secrets buried for decades. But the truth that emerges threatens not only her empire, but also everything she believed she knew about herself. November's fine rain fell over London like a grey veil, turning the city into a melancholic painting. Helena Thompson parked her black Mercedes in front of Highgate Cemetery, turned off the engine, and remained motionless for a few moments. 3 years. 3 years had passed since her world crumbled, in a way no fortune could rebuild. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel before she finally opened the door and faced that solitary ritual that repeated every November. The sound of her heels echoed on the wet cobblestone path. Helena walked with her usual upright posture, the one that intimidated executives in boardrooms and made competitors retreat. But there, among the tombs and the heavy silence of the rainy afternoon, her armor seemed to weigh more than usual. She held a bouquet of white lilies, Raphael's favorite flowers. As she turned onto the avenue leading to the Thompson family plot, Helena stopped abruptly. Her heart pounded. Someone was there. 2 figures, in fact. A young black woman wearing a simple waitress uniform under a thin, soaked coat was kneeling before the grave. Beside her, a small boy, no more than 3 years old, held her hand as he looked at the headstone with innocent curiosity. Helena felt a wave of indignation. Who were these people? Why were they there, invading her private moment of mourning? She advanced with firm steps, ready to demand explanations. But then it happened. The boy turned his face towards her, and Helena felt as if the ground opened beneath her feet. Those eyes, emerald green, intense, unmistakable, they were Raphael's eyes. The same eyes she had gazed into since the day he was born, the eyes he had inherited from his paternal grandfather. A rare trait in the Thompson family. The young woman noticed Helena's presence and quickly stood up, wiping tears from her face with the back of her hand. Her eyes were red and swollen, revealing she had been crying for some time. She pulled the boy closer, a protective gesture that did not go unnoticed by Helena. For a long moment, the 2 women stared at each other in silence, separated only by a few meters and an abyss of unasked questions. The rain continued to fall, light but persistent, marking the rhythm of that impossible encounter. Helena was the first to break the silence, her voice more tremulous than she intended. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" The young woman swallowed hard, her shoulders tense. "I could ask the same, madam, but I think I already know the answer. You're his mother, aren't you?" Her voice had a soft Liverpool accent, but there was firmness in her tone. Helena felt a mixture of confusion and anger growing in her chest. "Of course I'm Raphael's mother, and I demand to know who you are and why you brought this child here." The young woman took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "My name is Marina Smith. I worked at the diner near the University of London where Raphael studied. We met 4 years ago, and this," she pointed to the boy, "is Michael. He's 3 years old." Helena felt the world spin. No, this wasn't possible. Raphael had never mentioned any Marina, no serious relationship, much less a child. She would have known. She always knew everything about her son's life, or at least she thought she did. "You're lying," Helena shot back, her voice taking on the cutting tone she used in difficult negotiations. "My son never told me about you, and if there was a child I would know." Marina did not back down. Her eyes met Helena's with surprising intensity for someone so young. "With all due respect, madam, you didn't know much about your son's life. Raphael had his reasons for keeping it a secret. And yes, Michael is his son. Just look at the boy's eyes." Helena looked again at the child, who was now hiding behind Marina's legs, intimidated by the tension in the air. The green eyes watched her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. It was impossible to deny the resemblance, but admitting it would mean admitting that she had failed as a mother, that there was an entire part of Raphael's life she knew nothing about. "If what you say is true," Helena spoke slowly, controlling each word, "why did you never seek out the Thompson family? Why are you only appearing now?" Marina let out a bitter laugh. "Seek out the Thompson family? Do you think I didn't try? Right after Raphael passed, I went to your company. I was stopped at reception. I left messages. No one ever called me back. It wasn't me who disappeared, Mrs. Thompson. It was you who never wanted to listen. Helena felt a pang of something that might have been guilt, but quickly pushed it away. She had no time for sentimentalism. She needed answers, proof, something concrete. Do you have any proof of what you're saying? A birth certificate, a DNA test? Marina hesitated for an instant, and Helena noticed. There was something there, some secret. I have what I need to have, Marina replied evasively. Michael is Raphael's son, and I've cared for him since he was born. That's all that matters. It's not all that matters, Helena retorted, taking a step forward. If this child is truly my grandson, then he has rights. He has a right to the Thompson name, to an inheritance, to a dignified life. And you, a simple waitress, do you really think you can give him that? The words came out crueler than Helena intended, but she was fighting a whirlwind of emotions. Marina, however, was unfazed. On the contrary, her eyes narrowed and she raised her chin. Michael has love, he has care. He has someone who wakes up in the middle of the night when he has nightmares and who works double shifts to ensure he never goes without. That, Mrs. Thompson, cannot be bought with money. The silence that followed was dense, heavy with tension. Helena looked at Marina with new eyes, realizing she wasn't dealing with a frightened opportunist, but with a woman who wouldn't easily back down. This changed everything. We need to talk, Helena finally said, her mind already working on strategies. In a civilized manner, with lawyers present. I'll have my assistant contact you. Marina shook her head slowly. It won't be that simple, Mrs. Thompson. Do you think you can just show up now, after 3 years, and simply take control? Things don't work that way. Helena felt the anger return. I am this child's grandmother. I have rights. And I am the one who raised Michael from his first day of life. Who has rights here? Marina picked up the boy, shielding him from the rain that was starting to fall harder. Come on, my love. It's time for us to go home. As Marina walked away with Michael in her arms, Helena stood still, the bouquet of lilies still in her hand, watching the two figures disappear among the tombs and the mist. Her heart was racing, and her mind was already at work. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. Helena Thompson didn't sleep that night. Sitting in her private office on the 23rd floor of the Thompson Corporation's building, she watched the lights of London through the panoramic window as her mind worked tirelessly. The encounter at the cemetery had shaken her certainties in a way she hadn't experienced in decades. Since building her empire, Helena had always known exactly how to handle every situation. But that woman, that Marina Smith, and especially the boy's green eyes, had awakened something she couldn't control. At dawn, Helena had already summoned Morris Anderson, her personal assistant of 15 years, for an urgent meeting. Morris arrived at 6 in the morning, finding his boss impeccably dressed with a cup of black coffee in hand, and that look he knew well, the look of someone about to declare war. I need you to hire the best private investigators you can find, Helena said bluntly, handing Morris a sheet with the little information she had about Marina. I want to know everything about this woman. Where she was born, where she studied, employment history, criminal record, debts, relationships, everything. And most importantly, I need to know about this child. I want paternity confirmation, birth certificate, medical records. Maurice examined the sheet, his eyebrows raising slightly. This has to do with Raphael, doesn't it? Helena didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. Maurice knew his boss well enough not to ask further questions. I'll take care of it personally, Mrs. Thompson. How soon do you need the information? As soon as possible. I want a preliminary report by tomorrow. In the following 48 hours, Helena barely left her office. She cancelled important meetings, ignored calls from business partners, and dedicated herself exclusively to thinking about the next step. When Maurice finally returned with the initial report, Helena devoured it with her eyes, absorbing every detail. Marina Smith, 27 years old, originally from Liverpool, orphaned since 17, no records of higher education, worked as a waitress in 3 different establishments over the last 5 years, including the diner near the University of London. Simple financial history, no significant debts or assets, no criminal record, lives in a rented apartment in the East End. Helena frowned. And the child? The boy, Michael? Maurice hesitated, and Helena immediately realized something was wrong. Here's where it gets interesting, Mrs. Thompson. There's no registered birth certificate for a child named Michael Smith in the last 4 years. We also found no medical records of birth or vaccination. It's as if the child officially doesn't exist. What do you mean, doesn't exist? Helena stood up abruptly. All children must be registered. It's mandatory. I know. And that's exactly why it's strange. Either she's using a false name for the child, or there's something very irregular about this situation. The investigators suggested that perhaps the child was born outside the country, or that Marina assumed guardianship irregularly. Helena felt a mixture of triumph and concern. If there was no legal documentation, that meant she had an advantage. But it also meant the situation was more complex than she had imagined. "Keep investigating," she ordered. "I want to know where this child was born and why there are no records. And I want discreet surveillance. I need to know who Marina meets with, where she goes, what she does." Maurice nodded and left, leaving Helena alone with her thoughts. She picked up the photo she kept on her desk, the last photo of Raphael before he passed from her life. A handsome young man with bright green eyes and a confident smile. "Where did I go wrong, son?" Helena whispered to the photo. "Why did you never tell me?" But Raphael couldn't answer, and Helena knew she had to move forward. She was a woman of action, not lamentation. And if that boy was truly her grandson, she would do whatever it took to bring him to where he belonged, to the Thompson family. 3 days later, Maurice brought new information, and this time his expression was even more concerned. "Mrs. Thompson, we have a problem. Last night, Marina Smith met someone at a cafe in Shoreditch, a well-dressed, middle-aged man. The investigators took photos and we did facial recognition." Helena picked up the photos Maurice placed on the table. An elegant, grey-haired man conversing intensely with Marina. "Who is he?" "Robert Foster, a tax lawyer, partner at one of London's largest corporate law firms, specializes in family law and civil rights cases. He has represented numerous individuals in lawsuits against large corporations." Helena felt a shiver run down her spine. A simple waitress wouldn't have access to a lawyer of that caliber, much less the resources to pay him. What did they talk about? "We couldn't catch the conversation, but the body language suggests it was something serious. And there's more. This morning, Foster's firm filed a preventive petition in family court. They are requesting a protective order to prevent any attempt to remove or separate the child from his current legal guardian." Helena felt anger surge in her chest. That woman had anticipated her. She was playing chess while Helena still thought she was playing checkers. How did she manage to hire Foster? He charges a fortune. That's exactly what we're asking ourselves. The investigators are trying to find out who's funding this. But there's one more thing, madam. Marina isn't alone. We've identified other contacts of hers in recent days. She met with a journalist from The Guardian, Patricia Miller, known for her investigative reports on corporate corruption. The name Patricia Miller made Helena stiffen. She knew that journalist well. Years ago, Patricia had tried to publish an article about alleged irregularities at Thompson Corporations. Helena had used all her contacts and influence to prevent publication, but the journalist had never forgotten. That was no coincidence. "This woman is setting up a siege," Helena murmured, more to herself than to Maurice. "She's not what she seems to be. A simple waitress wouldn't have these contacts, wouldn't know how to maneuver like this." "What do you want me to do?" Helena thought for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the table. "Prepare a financial proposal. Generous. Very generous. We will offer her an amount that solves all her problems for the rest of her life. In exchange, she grants us custody of Michael and disappears." "Do you think she'll accept?" Helena smiled coldly. "Everyone has a price, Maurice. It's just a matter of finding the right amount. And if she refuses, well, then we'll know there's much more to this story than she's telling. And when we know what she really wants, we can act accordingly." Maurice left to prepare the documents, and Helena returned to observe the city through the window. Below, London teemed with millions of people, each fighting their own battles. But Helena Thompson never lost a battle, and she wasn't about to start now. The boardroom on the 30th floor of Thompson Corporations was carefully prepared to impress. Helena knew the power of symbols and atmosphere. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of London, reminding any visitor of the heights at which the Thompson family operated. The polished mahogany table reflected the strategically placed lights, and the Italian leather armchairs were comfortable enough to disarm any initial tension. When Marina entered the room, accompanied by Robert Foster, Helena observed her carefully. The young woman no longer wore her waitress uniform. She wore simple dress pants and a discreet blouse, but clean and well-pressed. Her hair was pulled back into an elegant bun, and she walked with an upright posture showing no intimidation. Helena had to admit, if only to herself, that she had underestimated that woman. "Thank you for accepting my invitation," Helena began, gesturing for Marina and her lawyer to sit. "I believe we can resolve this situation in a civilized manner, beneficial for everyone, especially for Michael." Marina sat down slowly, her eyes never leaving Helena's face. "I'm here because Dr. Foster thought it would be prudent to hear what you have to say. But let me be clear from the start. I'm not here to negotiate Michael's life." Helena allowed herself a small smile. "Everyone says that at first." She opened an elegant folder before her. "Let's get straight to the point then. I want to recognize Michael as my grandson. I want to give him the Thompson name, all the opportunities that name can provide, the best education, the best health care, a brilliant future. And in return, I am prepared to be extremely generous with you." Marina crossed her arms, her expression remaining neutral. "Define generous." Helena slid a document across the table. £5 million, deposited into an account of your choice, tax-free. Enough for you to never have to work as a waitress again, to go back to studying if you wish, to start a business, to travel the world. All I need in return is for you to agree to transfer legal guardianship of Michael to me." The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of traffic below. Robert Foster calmly leafed through the document, unhurried, while Marina remained motionless, her gaze fixed on Helena. Finally, the lawyer closed the folder and looked at his client. "Marina." Marina took a deep breath and leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "Mrs. Thompson, do you really think you can buy a child? That you can come here with a check and I will simply hand over Michael as if he were merchandise?" Helena maintained her controlled expression. "I'm not trying to buy anything. I'm offering you fair compensation for the time and effort you've dedicated to caring for my grandson. I'm acknowledging your contribution." "Contribution?" Marina let out a bitter laugh. "I didn't make a contribution, Mrs. Thompson. I raised that boy. I was the one who woke up in the middle of the night when he had a fever. I was the one who taught him his first words, who healed his scraped knees, who wiped away his tears. Michael doesn't know me as a contribution. He knows me as his mother." "But you are not his mother," Helena retorted, her voice gaining an edge. "And it's time you accepted that. Michael deserves more than a cramped apartment in the East End. He deserves more than a life of financial limitations." Marina's eyes narrowed. "So that's what you think? That love is measured in square meters and bank digits? Let me tell you something about your son, since you clearly didn't know him as well as you thought." Helena felt her blood boil, but Marina continued before she could interrupt. "Raphael told me about his childhood, about how you were always too busy to attend his music performances, about how he learned to play the violin by himself, because you thought music lessons were a waste of time compared to business administration courses, about how he felt invisible in his own home, just another asset of Thompson Corporation's." "You have no right to talk about my relationship with my son," Helena said through gritted teeth, her mask of control beginning to crack. "Yes, I do," Marina replied firmly, "because Raphael gave me that right when he trusted me, when he told me his fears, his frustrations, his dreams, and especially when he asked me to protect Michael from becoming just another piece on the Thompson family's corporate chessboard." Robert Foster placed a hand on Marina's arm, a subtle gesture of caution, but Marina was just getting started. "You want to talk about what Michael deserves. He deserves to be raised with love, not obligations. He deserves to have a childhood, not a business succession schedule planned before he turns 5. And you know what else he deserves? He deserves the truth. All of it." "What truth?" Helena asked, her voice sounding louder than she intended. Marina stood up slowly, smoothing her trousers. "The truth about how Thompson Corporations really operates. The truth about the skeletons you keep in your closet. The truth about why Raphael spent the last few months before his passing investigating his own mother." Helena went pale. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating it." Robert Foster also stood up, positioning himself beside Marina. He opened his folder and took out a thick envelope. "My client authorizes me to inform you that she is in possession of extremely relevant documents. Documents that your son gathered before his passing. Documents that show a pattern of tax irregularities, questionable contracts, and dubious corporate practices that extend over more than 2 decades. Helena felt as if she had been punched in the stomach, but she maintained her composure. "Is this a threat?" "It's a fact," Marina replied calmly, "and you have a choice to make. You can accept that Michael will stay with me, that he will have a happy and protected life, and that eventually, when he's older and can decide for himself, he might choose to know his grandmother. Or you can continue trying to buy me, intimidate me, sue me. But if you choose that path, know that I will not back down, and that these documents can become public." Helena leaned on the table, trying to process what she had just heard. "My son would never do that. He would never betray me like this." Marina picked up her bag and turned to leave, but stopped at the door. "Raphael wasn't betraying you, Mrs. Thompson. He was trying to save you from yourself. He discovered things that frightened him, things he thought you didn't even know were happening in the company. He wanted to confront you, he wanted you to correct the mistakes, but he never had the chance." Marina's voice trembled slightly. "And now I have the responsibility to decide what to do with all that he left behind." "Marina," Helena called, her voice almost pleading, a rare vulnerability appearing. "Please don't do this. We can find a middle ground. I can increase the offer. I can guarantee regular visits. We can establish a shared custody agreement." "There is no middle ground when it comes to a child's well-being," Marina said softly, "and there is definitely no price that will make me hand over Michael. Good afternoon, Mrs. Thompson. I hope you reflect carefully on your next actions." The door closed behind Marina and Robert Foster, and Helena was left alone in the enormous room, the £5 million document still open on the table. She looked at the city below, the lights beginning to come on as evening fell, and for the first time in decades, she felt something she wasn't used to feeling. Fear. Fear that everything she had built, the entire empire she had raised with such determination, might be about to crumble. And even more frightening, fear that perhaps it deserved to crumble. Marina's apartment in the East End was small but cozy. The light yellow painted walls reflected the light streaming in through the window, and there were Michael's drawings taped to the refrigerator with colorful magnets. That Friday night, however, the living room had been transformed into an improvised war room. The dining table was covered with documents, folders, and an open laptop displaying complex spreadsheets. Marina served coffee to the 3 visitors who had arrived promptly at 8 in the evening. Robert Foster was there, of course, reviewing some legal documents. Beside him was Patricia Miller, the investigative journalist whose red hair and attentive eyes missed no detail. And sitting in the most comfortable armchair was Mrs. Celia, an elegant woman in her 60s, wearing a beige linen outfit and gold-rimmed glasses. There was a natural authority about her that filled the room, a presence that seemed out of place in that simple apartment. Michael was already asleep in the next room, and Marina had carefully closed the door before returning to the meeting. "Sorry for the cramped space," she said, sitting in the last available chair. "It's not exactly a corporate office." Mrs. Celia smiled affectionately. "Darling, I've told you 1,000 times that this place has more soul than any boardroom I've ever frequented. And believe me, I've frequented many." She took the coffee cup Marina offered her. "Now tell me, how was the meeting with the snake?" Marina couldn't help but smile at the description. "Helena Thompson tried to buy me off. £5 million. She thought she could just write a check, and I'd hand over Michael as if he were a delivery." Patricia Miller jotted something down in her notebook. Typical of her. Helena always thought everything had a price. That's why she is where she is, and that's why she will fall. Robert Foster adjusted his glasses and looked at Marina seriously. "You understand there's no turning back now, don't you? By refusing her offer and making the threats we did, we've declared war. Helena Thompson isn't just going to give up. She's going to attack with everything she has." "I know," Marina replied calmly. "That's exactly why I've spent the last 3 years preparing." She opened a thick folder. She looked around the table at each of the faces that had become her chosen family. "Thank you for everything, for believing in me when no one else did." Mrs. Celia reached out and held Marina's hand. "You remind me so much of your mother, dear. She had that same determination, that same strength. And if she were here, she'd be so proud of you. Marina felt her eyes sting, but blinked quickly to ward off tears. She looked at Mrs. Celia with deep gratitude. The story of how Mrs. Celia had entered her life was itself worthy of a novel. 3 years ago, when Marina was desperate, trying to understand the documents Raphael had left her, it was Mrs. Celia who appeared. At first, Marina didn't understand why such a refined and obviously well-connected woman would be interested in a simple waitress with a baby. But over time, the truth emerged. Mrs. Celia wasn't just an influential woman. She was Raphael's paternal aunt, sister of Helena's late husband. And she had observed over the years how Helena had transformed the family business into something she barely recognized, how practices had become increasingly questionable, how ambition had overcome ethics. When Raphael passed away, Mrs. Celia completely distanced herself from Helena, but never stopped looking for answers. It was on a rainy afternoon that Mrs. Celia first encountered Marina, trying to calm Michael, who was crying inconsolably while she waited for the bus. Mrs. Celia offered a ride, and in that car, as Marina soothed the baby by singing a lullaby, something on her face caught the older woman's attention. It was the locket Marina wore around her neck, an antique locket with the initials R.T., Raphael Thompson, the same locket Mrs. Celia had given her nephew on his 18th birthday. From that day on, Mrs. Celia became Marina's mentor, surrogate mother, and most powerful ally. It was she who introduced Robert Foster, a lawyer who had been Mrs. Celia's husband's best friend, and who had his own reasons for wanting to see Helena Thompson answer for her actions. It was she who connected Marina with Patricia Miller, who for years had been seeking sufficient evidence to expose the irregularities of Thompson corporations. And it was Mrs. Celia who, with infinite patience, taught Marina about the corporate world, about business law, about how to read financial statements and identify tax irregularities. For 3 years, Marina worked by day as a waitress and studied by night, not only caring for Michael but transforming herself into someone capable of facing Helena Thompson on her own territory. Patricia closed her notebook and looked at Marina. "I need to know, are you absolutely sure about the documents? There can be no room for error when we publish this. Helena has the best lawyers in the country. Any flaw and she'll destroy us legally." Marina opened the laptop and turned the screen so everyone could see. Raphael was meticulous. He spent months compiling this. There are contracts with shell companies, suspicious bank transfers to offshore accounts, falsified tax documents, fraudulent bidding agreements, and most importantly, there are emails. Many emails where Helena was aware of everything. Robert leaned in to examine it better. When did Raphael discover all this? Marina took a deep breath, remembering the painful conversations they had. He started to suspect when he went to work at the company during university holidays. Raphael wanted to make amends with his mother. He wanted to get closer. So he accepted an internship in the finance department. That's where he noticed inconsistencies. Being the owner's son, he had access to systems that normal interns wouldn't have. And he was intelligent, very intelligent. "And when did he tell you?" Mrs. Celia asked softly. Marina smiled sadly, remembering those nights when Raphael would arrive at her apartment, distressed, torn between his love for his mother and the horror of what he was discovering. A few months before he passed, he was conflicted. He wanted to believe that Helena didn't know the extent of the problems, that perhaps it was her subordinates acting secretly. But the more he investigated, the clearer it became that Helena wasn't just an accomplice. She was the architect of everything. And what did he intend to do? Patricia asked. He wanted to confront Helena, give her the chance to correct everything, to surrender to the authorities voluntarily, to make a deal. Raphael believed in redemption. He believed that his mother, deep down, had a heart. Marina paused, her voice growing heavier. But before he could do that, the accident happened, and everything changed. The silence that followed was respectful, each person in the room absorbing the weight of that revelation. Finally, Robert broke the silence. "So Raphael left all this to you because he trusted you to do what he didn't have time to do." "Not exactly," Marina corrected. "He left this to me because he made me promise that I would protect Michael above all else, that I wouldn't let Helena turn our son into another victim of her ambition. The documents were merely a guarantee that I would have enough ammunition if I needed to defend myself. Raphael never wanted to destroy his mother. He wanted to save her. Mrs. Celia shook her head sadly. My nephew was always too good for that woman. She looked at Marina with renewed determination. But we don't have the luxury of his kindness. Helena made her choices. Now she needs to face the consequences. Marina looked around the table at that improbable group of allies, a renowned lawyer working pro bono, an investigative journalist eager to finally publish the truth, and a woman from London's high society who had turned her back on her own family on principle. And at the center of it all herself, a former waitress who had transformed into a strategist. So it's decided, Marina said firmly. On Monday, Patricia publishes the first article. Robert files the civil lawsuits. And I finally fulfill the promise I made to Raphael, not to destroy his mother, but to ensure that Michael grows up in a world where truth and justice still mean something. Monday dawned with a clear sky over London, but for Helena Thompson it felt as if a storm had broken over her life. She had been in her office since 5 in the morning, trying to get ahead on work, when her cell phone began to ring incessantly. The first call was from Maurice, his voice tense in a way she had never heard before. Mrs. Thompson, did you see this morning's newspaper? Helena frowned. Maurice, you know I don't read print newspapers. Why waste time when I can have the relevant information filtered? You need to see this. I'm sending it by email now. It's about Thompson Corporations. It's about you. Helena opened her computer with a growing sense of dread. When Maurice's email arrived and she clicked the link, she felt her blood run cold. The headline occupied the entire front page of London's most respected newspaper. Empire built on sand. Decades of irregularities at Thompson Corporations revealed in exclusive investigation. And below in smaller letters, by Patricia Miller. Helena began to read, and with each paragraph she felt as if she were being stripped bare in public. There were details she thought only half a dozen people knew. Fraudulent contracts with shell companies, £1 million transfers to tax havens, bids won through documented bribes, and worst of all, emails. Her own emails, authorizing, coordinating, planning every illegal move. The phone didn't stop ringing, investors demanding explanations, business partners threatening to break contracts, board members in a panic. Helena tried to do damage control, calling her lawyers, activating her media contacts, but it was like trying to hold back a tsunami with her bare hands. At 9 in the morning, Robert Foster filed a public civil action representing a group of minority shareholders who claimed to have been harmed by the company's fraudulent practices. At 10, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, HMRC, announced a complete investigation of all Thompson Corporation's operations over the last 20 years. At 11, the Crown Prosecution Service requested the freezing of all the company's bank accounts while the investigation was underway. Helena watched her empire crumble in real time. Thompson Corporation's shares, which were still trading at a stable value that morning, went into freefall. Investors selling in a panic. The company's website went offline, overwhelmed by traffic. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice. And then came Patricia Miller's second article, published online at noon. This one was even more devastating because it was personal. Titled, The Son Who Tried to Save His Mother, the report told the story of Raphael Thompson, a talented young man who had discovered irregularities in the family company and tried to do the right thing. The article painted a portrait of Raphael as a tragic hero, a young man who loved his mother but could not be complicit in her actions. Helena read every word with tears streaming down her face. There was her son, exposed to the public not as she had always imagined him, as the future heir to the Thompson empire, but as someone who had rejected all of it, as someone who had investigated her, who had gathered evidence against her, as someone who had died carrying the terrible weight of having to choose between family and justice. The third article, published at 3 in the afternoon, was the final blow. Patricia Miller revealed the existence of Michael, the grandson Helena had only recently discovered, but the narrative was completely different from the one Helena had imagined building. The article showed Marina as a heroine, a simple woman who was raising the child with love while fighting against an unscrupulous billionaire who had tried to buy the boy's guardianship with £5 million. There were photos. Michael in the playground, laughing. Michael with Marina, clearly loved and well cared for. And there was the full story told with moving details, of how Marina had taken on the responsibility of raising Raphael's son, honoring his memory while protecting the child from becoming another pawn in Helena's power game. Public opinion was immediate and brutal. Helena Thompson, who for decades had been seen as a successful businesswoman, a woman who had broken barriers in a male-dominated world, was now portrayed as a villain. People did not forgive the attempt to separate a child from the one who raised him. They did not forgive the decades of fraud. And they definitely did not forgive the fact that her own son had tried to expose her. Late in the afternoon, when Helena finally managed to leave her office, there were protesters in front of the building. People with signs demanding justice, demanding that she answer for her actions. Security had to escort her to the underground parking lot, but even there, employees of the company itself looked at her with a mixture of fear and contempt. At home, alone in her empty mansion in Kensington, Helena wandered through the rooms like a ghost. She passed Raphael's bedroom, still preserved exactly as he had left it. She saw his violin, covered in dust, leaning in the corner. She remembered all the times she had said music was a hobby, not a career. All the performances she had missed because she was busy with the company. All the conversations they never had because she was too tired, too stressed, too important. The phone rang. It was an unknown number, but Helena answered anyway, perhaps hoping it was a lawyer with good news, an ally offering help. But it was Marina's voice. "Good evening, Mrs. Thompson. I imagine it's been a difficult day." Helena felt anger explode. "You destroyed everything I spent a lifetime building. Are you satisfied?" "I didn't destroy anything, Helena," Marina replied calmly, and the use of her first name was like a slap. "You destroyed yourself. All the frauds, all the irregularities, all the unethical decisions, those were your choices. I merely brought to light what already existed in the shadows." "What do you want?" Helena asked, her voice broken. "Money? More money. I can get it. I can sell everything, I can transfer properties. Just stop this, please." "I don't want your money, Mrs. Thompson, I never did." Marina paused. "I want you to understand something. Raphael didn't hate you. He was trying to save you. He thought if he gathered enough evidence, if he showed you the way back to honesty, perhaps you could change. But you never gave him that chance." "My son is gone because of my actions?" Helena asked, her voice barely audible. "Not directly. But the choices you made created a dangerous world around you. Raphael discovered things that powerful people didn't want to be discovered. He was getting close to truths that threatened not only you, but an entire network of corrupt individuals." Marina took a deep breath. "His accident wasn't a coincidence, Helena. It was a consequence of living in a world where lies and deceit became routine." Helena fell to her knees in the middle of the room, the phone still against her ear. "No, it can't be true. Raphael discovered all this before he passed. He left a letter for me explaining his fears, saying that if anything happened to him, I should wait for the right moment to expose everything. He wanted the truth to come out, not for revenge, but for justice." Marina paused. "And he wanted Michael to stay away from all of this, to grow up in an environment of honesty and love, something he never had." "What will happen now?" Helena whispered. "Now justice will take its course. The prosecutors will do their job. The courts will decide. And Michael will continue to be raised with love, far from all this storm." Marina took a deep breath. "Goodbye, Mrs. Thompson. I hope that one day you find peace. But that peace won't come through power or money. It will come through truth." The call ended, and Helena remained there alone in the dark, while outside the city continued its normal life, indifferent to the crumbling of an empire. 5 years had passed since that Monday that changed everything. Autumn had returned to London, bringing with it that same fine, melancholic rain that seemed to mark moments of transformation in people's lives. But this time, the rain fell upon a completely different scene. Helena Thompson was sitting in a small visitation room, her pale, wrinkled hands resting on the worn Formica table. She no longer wore the impeccable designer suits that were once her trademark. Now she wore a simple uniform, the same one all the other inmates wore. Her hair, once perfectly styled in expensive salons, was grey and pulled back into a simple ponytail. At 62, Helena seemed to have aged decades. The judicial process had been long and painful. Lawyers tried everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Helena was convicted of tax fraud, money laundering, and corruption. The initial sentence was 15 years, but with good behavior and plea bargain agreements, where she exposed the entire network of corruption she was part of, the sentence was reduced to 8 years. She had already served 5. Thompson Corporations was dissolved. Assets were liquidated to pay fines and compensate injured investors. What remained was placed in a trust fund administered by an independent board, intended for Michael when he turned 21. But it wasn't a fortune. It was a modest amount that would guarantee his education and a good start in life. Helena heard footsteps outside the room and her heart quickened. It had been almost a year since the last visit. Marina came occasionally, always alone, always maintaining a respectful but firm distance. They talked about trivial things, about the weather, about how Helena was adapting to prison life, but never about Michael. Helena never had the courage to ask, and Marina never offered information. The door opened and Marina entered, but this time she wasn't alone. Beside her, holding her hand confidently, was Michael. The boy was now 8 years old, tall for his age, with the same dark hair and the same penetrating green eyes that Helena saw in her dreams every night. Helena felt tears well up immediately, but blinked quickly to hold them back. She didn't want to scare the boy. Marina and Michael sat on the other side of the table, and for a long moment no one said anything. "Hi," Michael finally spoke, his voice clear and curious. "Are you my grandmother?" "I am," Helena replied, her voice trembling. "I'm your grandmother, Helena. It's very good to finally meet you properly." Michael studied her face with the brutal honesty of children. "You look like my dad's pictures." "The same eyes," Helena smiled through her tears. "Your father had his grandfather's eyes. It's a Thompson family trait. And you inherited that too." Marina placed a hand on Michael's shoulder, a gesture of support and protection. "Michael wanted to meet you," she explained softly. "He's been asking a lot of questions lately, about family, about the past. I thought it was time." "Thank you," Helena said sincerely, looking at Marina with gratitude that transcended words. "Thank you for bringing him." Michael pulled a backpack from his back and took out a violin case. "I learned to play the violin," he announced proudly. "Auntie Marina said my dad played too. Do you want to hear?" Helena nodded, unable to speak. Michael carefully opened the case, revealing a small violin. With movements surprisingly confident for someone so young, he positioned the instrument and began to play. The melody was simple, but executed with a delicacy that broke Helena's heart. It was the same music Raphael used to play when he was about Michael's age. When he finished, Helena was openly weeping. "That was beautiful, Michael. Your father would be so proud." Michael carefully put away the violin. "Auntie Marina says I'm good. I'm going to perform in the school recital next month." He paused, looking at Marina as if asking for permission. "Can you come?" Helena looked at Marina, expecting her to say no, to set the necessary boundaries. But to her surprise, Marina nodded slightly. "I think we can arrange special authorization for that if you'd like," Marina said softly. "I'd love to," Helena whispered. "It would be an honor." They talked for another hour. Michael told them about school, about his friends, about violin lessons and how he was learning math. He talked about the house where they lived now, a small but cozy house in a quiet neighborhood. He talked about Mrs. Celia, whom he called Grandma Celia, and how she taught him to bake cookies. He talked about everything with the innocent joy of a child who knows love and security. When it was time to leave, Michael hugged Helena over the table, a quick but genuine embrace. "It was nice meeting you, Grandma," he said. "Can I come back again?" "Whenever your Auntie Marina allows it," Helena replied, looking at Marina with gratitude. After Michael left with the guard to wait outside, Marina stayed a few more minutes. She observed Helena in silence for a moment before speaking. "He's happy, you know, very happy. He has friends, he does well at school, he's surrounded by love." "I see that," Helena said, "and I'm grateful." "More grateful than you can imagine." Marina leaned forward. "You know, Helena, for a long time I hated you. I blamed you for everything. For Raphael's absence, for the difficulties, for everything. But over time I understood that you were also a victim of your own ambitions, of your own choices, of a system that values power above humanity." "Don't excuse me," Helena said firmly. "I made terrible choices. I hurt people. including my own son. I deserve to be here." "Perhaps," Marina agreed, "but Raphael didn't want me to hate you. He wanted you to have the chance to change, to redeem yourself. So that's what I'm trying to do. Give you that chance. Not for me, but for him, and for Michael." Marina stood up to leave, but Helena called her. "Marina, wait. There's something I need to tell you. Something you deserve to know. The true story." Marina sat back down, her expression cautious. "What story?" "About Michael's biological mother. About who she was." Helena took a deep breath, preparing to finally reveal the secret she had kept for so long. "Her name was Isabella. Isabella Foster." Marina paled. "Foster? Like Robert Foster?" "Yes. Isabella was Robert's niece, but more importantly, she was the great-granddaughter of Charles Thompson, my late husband's brother." Helena clasped her hands, guilt weighing in every word. 30 years ago, when my husband passed away from a sudden heart attack, he left the company to me and Charles in equal parts. Charles was a good, honest man, but he lacked business vision. I wanted to expand, take risks, grow. He wanted to keep things small and ethical. "And what did you do?" Marina asked, though she already intuited the answer. "I betrayed him. I used legal but unethical practices to dilute his shareholding. I made deals behind his back with other shareholders. Basically, I stole half of his company. Charles never recovered. He distanced himself, took his family away, and refused to have any contact with me again." Helena wiped away tears. Years later, when Isabella was born, she was the family's hope. Beautiful, intelligent, full of life. And then she met Raphael. "They met at university?" Marina asked. "Yes. Neither of them knew about the family connection at first. When they found out, they were already in love. Raphael came to tell me, thinking it would be a perfect reconciliation. But I forbade the relationship. I told him he had to choose between her and the family." Helena covered her face with her hands. "He chose her, and when Isabella became pregnant, they planned to marry in secret. But then there were complications in the pregnancy. Isabella passed away during childbirth, and Raphael was left alone with a baby and a world of pain. That's when he met me," Marina said softly. "I was working at the hospital, bringing food to patients. He was in the hallway holding Michael, completely lost. I helped him, and I kept helping. And he fell in love with you," Helena said, "because you did for him what I never did. You saw him. You cared. You didn't judge him." She looked at Marina with genuine admiration. "You became Michael's mother not out of obligation, but out of love. And you protected my grandson from the same fate I inflicted upon my son." Marina was crying now too. Raphael discovered this whole story before he passed. He was trying to gather evidence not only of the corporate frauds, but of the original fraud. He wanted to restore the company's share to Charles's family, to Michael as compensation. He wanted to correct his mistakes, and I never gave him that chance," Helena whispered. "I was so busy protecting my empire that I didn't realize I was destroying my family. Raphael didn't pass away by chance, Marina. He was getting close to dangerous truths about powerful people connected to my businesses, people who wouldn't tolerate being exposed." The two women sat in silence, the weight of all those revelations filling the space between them. Finally, Marina stood up again. "Michael will never know the sordid details of all this, but he will know the basic truth, that his father was a good man who tried to do the right thing, that his biological mother was a wonderful woman, and that you, despite all your mistakes, can also choose to be better." "It's far more than I deserve," Helena said. "It's not about deserving. It's about giving a child the chance to know their whole story, not just the beautiful parts." Marina went to the door. "I'll send you photos from the recital, and we'll be back for another visit soon." After Marina left, Helena remained alone in the room for a few minutes, processing everything. Outside, through the small barred window, she could see the grey London sky. The rain had stopped, and a ray of sunshine tried to break through the clouds. Helena thought about everything she had lost, the empire, the reputation, years of freedom. But she had also gained something, the possibility of redemption, the chance to know her grandson, to finally understand what truly mattered. It wasn't power, it wasn't money, it wasn't titles or corporate achievements. It was love. It was family. It was the courage to admit mistakes and try, even if late, to correct them. Outside the prison, Marina and Michael walked hand in hand towards the car. Michael was excited, telling her everything he had said to his grandmother. Marina listened with a smile, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "Auntie Marina," Michael suddenly asked, "do you think Grandma Helena will be able to get out of prison one day?" Marina stopped and knelt in front of the boy, looking directly into his green eyes. "Yes, my love. In a few years, she'll get out. And when that happens, if she has changed, if she has learned, perhaps we can give her a chance to be part of our lives." "For real, I'd like that," Michael said. "She seems sad. I think she needs a family too." Marina hugged the boy tightly, marveling at a child's capacity for compassion. "You have your father's heart, you know. A huge heart, capable of forgiving and loving even when it's difficult." They got into the car, and Marina drove towards home, that simple but lively house they had transformed into a home. Mrs. Celia would be waiting with dinner ready, eager to hear how the meeting went. And after dinner, Michael would practice the violin while Marina reviewed her college assignments. She had finally managed to get into university to study law, fulfilling the dream Raphael always knew she had. Life wasn't perfect. There were still bills to pay, challenges to face, difficult days. But it was a life built on truth and love, a life where Michael grew up knowing not only privileges, but values. Knowing not only his financial legacy, but his moral legacy. And somewhere Marina knew Raphael was watching and smiling, knowing that his son was exactly where he needed to be, surrounded by people who loved him, not for what he represented, but for who he was. The true inheritance Michael would receive would not be measured in bank accounts or corporate shares. It would be measured in lessons of character, in examples of courage, in stories of redemption and forgiveness. It would be the inheritance of knowing that even from the most terrible mistakes, even from the deepest betrayals, something good can emerge. It is possible to choose a different path. And on that late afternoon in London, as the sun finally broke through the clouds and illuminated the city with a golden light, 3 generations of the Thompson family, each in their own place, each on their own journey, were finally learning what it truly meant to belong to a family. It wasn't about powerful surnames or accumulated fortunes. It was about choosing every day to be better than one was yesterday. It was about protecting those we love, even when that means protecting them from ourselves. And it was about understanding that the true legacy we leave is not what we build with our hands, but what we plant in the hearts of those who will come after us. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Helena, Marina, and Michael has touched your hearts. This narrative shows us that it's never too late to seek redemption, that true love overcomes social barriers, and that the choices we make today build the world we will leave for future generations. If this story moved you as much as it moved us in creating it, we ask that you leave a like on the video and subscribe to our channel. We have prepared a special playlist with equally engaging stories that you will find by clicking here next to it. Every day we bring narratives that explore the complexity of life, the power of redemption, and the strength of true love. Let us know in the comments which part of the story resonated with you the most. We want to hear your opinion. Tell us if you believe in the power of forgiveness, if you think Helena deserved a second chance, and what you would do in Marina's place. Don't miss our next content. Each story is a unique journey of emotion and reflection. Until next time, and remember, true wealth lies in the people we love and the values we cultivate.